Greetings, everyone. Anthony Russell, banners on the wall back here again. And well, a lot of people would probably say they're a little bit flavour of the month, but for very, very good reason, because they have hit the road running at full speed. The Solway Sharks have joined the NIHL National Division, and I'm joined by one of the men who has made that happen. One of the co-owners, the new co-owners of the Solway Sharks, John Strange, joins me. John, thank you for giving up a chunk of your evening to speak to me.
Quite all right. Not a problem at all. Looking forward to it.
Well, ask the first big question then. Are you mad?
Clearly, yes. It's been a 3-week roller coaster thus far. But mad, no, this is just the beginning.
I think we kind of need to touch on what certainly for me was one of the bigger elephants in the room right at the start of this process, which was because, of course, for anybody who kind of looks more than a couple of seconds, both you and Phil Riley, one of your co-owners, have a very, very long history of involvement with the Glasgow Clan. Last season was tumultuous, I think is probably the best word to describe how things were in Glasgow. You and Phil had this long-running attempt at a bid to try and take over the clan. That obviously didn't come to fruition. They've obviously got new owners now. We say congratulations to them on that, yes. And we hope that we wish the clan success kind of going forward with it. But there must have been a point, and I take you back to that kind of point where you and Phil sit down and have this conversation, and you realise that what's happening, trying to take over the clan, is not going to fly. What was the feeling like at that point?
If I'm being brutally honest, the feeling was utter devastation. We were gutted. I'm not going to lie, we were absolutely gutted. We had put 6 months of our life into putting a plan together to make it work. Both being businessmen. Phil had just sold one of his businesses, and big hockey fans, Glasgow Clan fans. I was as their title sponsor. So to get through that process, which was a lengthy process of negotiating and meetings and negotiating and demands, and I mean, I'm not going to get into it too much because I'm not here to talk about the clan, but it came to the end, and when it was obvious it wasn't going to be us, we were heartbroken. However, that opens up opportunities, and we were presented with a number, I have to say, a number of opportunities. All of a sudden, people in the hockey world, in the UK certainly anyway, were interested to speak to us and talk to us, and we had a number of quarters, shall we say, and a number of opportunities to consider. And well, we're here where we are now. So
I mean, we've heard quite a lot from certainly in sort of a public sphere, and credit goes to Andy at sort of Sharks TV, because I think anybody who comes through the door seems to get sort of sat down very firmly. It's like you're getting on Zoom and you're chatting to him. Yeah. And we've heard a fair bit from sort of Martin and from Jamie, the sort of the coaching staff, about how bits and pieces came about. But I want to hear the conversation from the perspective of you three, because of course there's you, there's Phil, there's David right. Buchanan, of course, your other joint owner. How does you say there's obviously sort of a lot of guys courting you for this, but how does this conversation come about? How does it end up being in Dumfries?
It's very simple. I was at a gig in the Hydro in Glasgow, and Craig Peacock messaged me to say, Craig and I got on really well, good friends, and he messaged me to say Martin Grubb from Solway Sharks has asked for your number. Are you okay if I pass it on? And I was like, well, what does he want? And he said, there's chat about the place that they're hoping to go to the National League, but they're looking for either investment, advice. He just wants to talk to you, given that your reputation thus far. He'd like to talk to you for some advice. So I said, yeah, of course. I was like, I better go. The gig's about to start, but yeah, phone me tomorrow. So I got Martin's number and I phoned him. And wow, an hour later, I came off the phone thinking, this guy's crazy. But as you know from speaking to him, the guy just oozes passion. It's it was pouring over the phone, and we just hit it off right away. So at this point in time, Phil and I had been looking at other opportunities. So I'd said to Phil, right, let's go down to Dumfries. It's only an hour away, an hour and a bit away. Let's go down there and we'll meet up with Martin and Jamie. We'll have a look around the rink. And if I'm being honest with you, and I've said this to Martin, but we're literally just going down just to say we've gone down and had a look. But we went down and fell in love instantly with the people, the rink, the philosophy, the history behind it and everything that they were attempting to try and do. But one thing they didn't have was a business plan that was achievable from an investment and a business-driven strategy side of things. They're hockey people. That's what they do. They can put a team on the ice, no problem. So we drove back up the road and both said to each other, right, I think this might be the one, but let's speak to our families first. So I got my wife and my daughters together and I said, look, here's the few options we've got now in the hockey world. Which one of these do you think suits us as a family better? And it was a unanimous decision. And then Phil phoned me about half an hour later and said, listen, I've just spoke to Cal and the kids and we've all voted Solway. So that was the decision made. We then had to convince the Solway board of directors that we were the right people. And at that point in time, I should bring David in as well. So David, although not officially part of the Glasgow Clan bid, had kind of been a huge support network for that. Like when Phil and I were pulling our hair out at various things, which I'm sure we'll all find out one day, he was very calm and just kept the two of us sane, shall we say. Yeah. So we both instantly thought of him and we said, you know what, that would be crazy not to ask David if he wants to be part of this, because he's a fantastic guy. His business lends itself quite nicely to design and production of things. He says, when you say to David, what is it you do? He says, I make stuff look good. So that's what his business does. So when you come to the rink and you see all the advertising and all the dasher boards and all the beautiful branding, that's David that will be doing all that. So we brought him on board. I took him down to meet Jamie and Martin, and we walked around the rink and he was in without, I didn't even have to ask him. He was in there and then. And that was that. And then all of a sudden, boom, within a week, we were having a chat with the other 10 teams in the league, which was a daunting experience, shall we say, sitting on a Zoom call with 10 guys I'd never met before, literally tearing us apart, making sure we were the right people for the job. But glad to say they believed in us and we're here.
Yeah, I find it interesting because, of course, like I mean, I've been very fortunate to have a fair few conversations with Martin and with Jamie, sort of, whether on the record or off record. And of course, I spoke to a lot of the Sharks guys immediately following the national Division 1 final in Coventry, and of course, it was all very, we don't know what's going on kind of thing. Struan Tonner was very, was just like, we'll see what happens, and everybody else was like, we'll see what happens, but. In some way, there was a lot of conversation about eventually this is going to have to happen. They're dominating the North. They're dominating the North too much. Coming at this from the outside, how important a move is this for Solway as a club? Because it could have been really easy for the Sharks to spend a bit of money, keep guys at Div 1, dominate the North again, go back to Coventry and do that. What, from your side as kind of the hockey person coming into this sphere, makes it think that actually we need to push this club onto a national level?
Yeah, I think to remain where they were was a bad move. No disrespect to all the other clubs round about them, but when you're consistently winning at that level and with the amount that they had been winning, something's got to give somewhere. And Martin had said, we breed really good homegrown hockey players here, and it breaks our heart when we have to let them go before we really believe we're finished with them, if you know what I mean. So it just made perfect sense to go for it. And what you get with us as an ownership group is action. Struan said to me the other day there, he said, the one thing I like about you, and I hope he's okay with me saying this, he said, the one thing I like about you guys... Too late now, Struan,
sorry.
Too late, Struan, it's out there. He said, the one thing I like about you guys is you're doers. You came in and you said, this is what we're going to do, and you've done it. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. He said, for so many years, we've been told this might happen, this may happen, somebody's going to do this, somebody's going to do that. Whereas when Phil and I and David decided we were doing it, we got around the table and we said, right, how do we do it? And how quickly can we do it? And can we wait a year? And I'm quite an impatient person. I want it now kind of person. So the thought of, and that was, by the way, that was part of the discussion, was shall we put a plan in place to move into the National League 24-25 season? But I was not interested in that. That was a no go for me. If we're going to do it, let's do it now. The time is now. So we're just throwing the kitchen sink at it.
Just to pull back to something actually there that you brought up that was sort of in those conversations about Solway being this as a club that has kind of taken these really good homegrown players and then kind of sort of lost them a little bit before they've had the opportunity. And you've obviously got a great sort of dearth of the core that's come back, whether it's Struan, Lewis Houston, Henderson's back, Callum Hepburn's back in goal, but you've also Liam Stenson's now come back into the fold after being full time at Glasgow last year. Barry McKenzie, of course, who many people know because he's been around British hockey for so long, but he's a Dumfries boy coming back in. The thing that was kind of that I was thinking about here was Solway now kind of stands a little bit more as a beacon in terms of kind of Scottish hockey, because with all due respect to the clubs in the Scottish National League, I mean, people talk about the gap between the National Division and the Elite League, but the gap between the Elite League and the Scottish National League is arguably even greater than that. This kind of sets Solway up in a little bit to almost be to be a real kind of beacon for not just players from kind of that sort of Dumfries and Galloway area, but those guys kind of in Scotland, those guys kind of on the periphery who are starting to get a bit too good for the SNL, aren't good enough for the Elite League, but would have to move 300, 400, 500 miles away from home almost in a little way to kind of really get seen. I mean, how does the club kind of have any ideas about how they're going to kind of manage that in terms of kind of expanding the tentacles with the risk of mixing sort of a sea-bound animal punt?
Yes, I have a shark on my t-shirt. Yes, so Solway already have a very good youth program. I mean, you'll find that the majority of the returning Sharks players all in their spare time and in their off time teach kids how to skate and how to play hockey. So there is going to be more homegrown players, Scottish-based players, than we can fit into one National League squad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, without committing to anything live with you, we are trying to figure out a way of making that work. Whether that be next season, we do a Solway SNL team potentially. But we don't know. We're chatting about that. We want to be able to open it up to all good British players, not just Scottish players. Although we're based in Scotland, we want to be able to give everyone an opportunity to reach the top level that they can, as best as they can.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that phone call from Martin that you have that kind of sort of sells you on bits and pieces. Just when it gets over the line and that the ink is dry or whatever it is needs to be signed in these kind of things, you own the club. What was the first thing that happened?
So that's a great question. What was the first? There's that many things happened. So I suppose we had the meeting with. So to sort of give you the timeline, we had the initial meeting with Martin and the council down at the Expo. Then they had said, yes, we want you guys to do it. So we then had to have the meeting with the existing Sharks board. Now, as you know, it was a sort of community council run. They were attempting to go for charitable status, all that kind of stuff. So we had to chat with them because they were effectively the custodians of the club at that point in time.
Yeah.
So they said, yes, we want you to take it forward. And then we had to have the meeting with the league. And the meeting with the league happened on, I think, is it the Wednesday night? Wednesday night. And then they all went away and thought about it and chatted amongst themselves and said, God knows what about us. And then on the Friday, Steve Nell called me to say, we've decided, yes, we'd like to accept you in. We will do a joint press release on Monday. So for a guy that likes to have things done instantly there and then, I was like, how am I keeping my mouth shut from Friday till Monday? But it was fine because Steve and I spoke all weekend, and I have to say he's been fabulous, and Aaron and Swindon as well. They've been really, really accommodating and really helpful so far, given that I've had about 4 billion questions I've needed answered. And to be fair, they're quick as you like coming back with the answers. So the first thing we did was I sent a picture of a shark into my family group chat, and just that was it. Just left it at that. And of course, one of the kids was like, question mark, you know. My wife got it straight away. She went, the deal's done, isn't it? I went, yes. And then we went out and celebrated. And so what was the first thing we did? The first thing we did was keep our mouths shut from Friday till Monday. And then after that, it was a case of, what do we need to do? What on earth do we need to do here? Right, we need to set up the limited company, the company that will own it. We then need to get the service level agreement with the council negotiated and in place. We have to figure out what's going to happen with this and that and this and that, and then we need to speak to Martin about signing players. And one of the first things actually we did was appoint Craig Peacock, which I always had in my mind, no matter what I did in hockey. Wherever I did it, I wanted Craig to be a part of that because he was retiring from playing, and the guy is so well respected amongst everyone in British hockey that I wanted him to come with us on the journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, the next question I was going to ask was about Craig, because obviously, is appointing him as general manager of the Sharks is obviously one of the first big announcements post joining. I mean, there's obviously, as you say, very highly respected in the game in Britain, been around a really long time. Apparently, willing to send to do social media posts from his stag do, which is interesting because his best man's let him keep his phone, which feels wildly inappropriate.
Yeah.
But I suppose there's a double-edged kind of sort of sword here in the fact that you're a brand new club with every moving into this brand new thing. You've appointed a complete rookie into quite an important position. And actually, one of the questions I asked was because the phrase general manager in British hockey spans a really, really wide sort of a really wide chasm of kind of things, of kind of either doing, being very focused on a very certain set of things or doing literally everything. And I say that having been in Basingstoke, where Mark Bernard would be like fixing the emergency exit signs and the ring and things like that. There is an argument that Craig is a risk because he's so brand new to it. But what is his role actually going to be? What does general manager of the Solway Sharks actually look like? What are his responsibilities?
Exactly the latter in what you just said there. He'll be doing everything. He might not be changing light bulbs, but he'll be doing everything. So his responsibilities range from assisting Martin in signing the players. So Craig has been doing all the contracts for the players thus far. Martin is the coach. Obviously, it's his job to recruit the players, but he's been working in conjunction with Craig. Craig's also responsible for sponsorship as well. Now, let's not forget we are taking this club from community amateur levels to national league levels, and the level of sponsorship that's required to make that work is huge. So we are going to work on that, or we are working on that as a collective ownership, but that's Craig. He had 3 meetings with potential sponsors today. So that's a big part of what he'll do. He'll also be the liaison for all those sponsors as well, because we're planning on putting on a fabulous game night experience as well. We're in this to make it fantastic for everyone, for the fans, for the players, for the community, for ourselves as well. So it'll be his job to make sure that the sponsors are all okay and they're all looked after. But he'll also be a little bit of a kind of I don't know, player liaison officer, I suppose you could call it, whereby Martin's the head coach, granted. But Craig will deal with the other side of things as well, the sort of business side of things. If there's an issue with a player, for whatever reason it will be, then Craig will help deal with that. And we're developing various areas around the rink as well, so he'll be involved in all of that. He's the man on the ground, if you like. Although there's 3 owners, it's not 3 full-time position owners, if you like. We all have our own businesses that we run, so we are collectively an ownership group, but Craig will be in charge of the day-to-day running of the business with our support.
Yeah, in a similar sort of way to kind of how Cardiff have their owners based in Calgary, and Todd Kelman is the man on the ground. That's the kind of the operation you guys are kind of aiming.
And Todd pretty much does everything. So
yes, he does.
He's a crack guy. He was instrumental in the support that Phil and I had during the process of trying to buy the clan. And I'm not just saying this because he might watch this, but I have a huge amount of respect for that man, what he's achieved in the time that he's been in the game, and the level of respect he showed us as relative rookies to the ownership world. I can't speak highly enough of him. So
I think that's it as well, because that it's quite a big step going from the and you sponsor, for folk who kind of look around, even just you personally, even if we take Phil and David out of this, your company, you've been total sponsors of the clan. You did other bits of sponsorship with them before that. St Mirren as well, who are very a football club of quite long standing in the upper echelons of sort of Scotland as well. You've kind of seen a lot behind the scenes of kind of how the sausage is made, and yet you've still decided to get involved in doing it. And I think what's that process been like? That kind of transition away from sort of being from the outside looking into this point where it's now, the buck stops with you now.
It's been scary. I'm not going to lie. The level of responsibility that's required is massive, and we're all, as I said, we're all doers. So we roll up our sleeves, we get stuck in, and we get stuff done. We're action takers, so we get in and we get it done. However, about a week in, maybe 3-4 days in, we both Phil and I at that point in time had a wee quick word with each other, and we were like, right, let's just take a beat here. Let's take a breath, because we are now in charge of everyone in that community's livelihood and their dreams. Martin, his wife Katie, Jamie, his wife Struan, all those stalwarts of the Solway Sharks. This has been their dream. This has been their dream for years, and we're in charge of it now. So it was like, we better not mess up. So
yeah. I mean, so now, like you say, you're there. The day, the bits and pieces are going. One of the really, really big things that has sparked everybody's attention is the fact that if we look back at periods of last season, the Sharks' social media presence was not very vocal at all. You guys take over, and I venture, because of how some of these things look, this might be Dave McCarroll's doing, but the social media, I was speaking to a player from within the national division earlier today about bits and pieces, and he said to me they've gone from doing virtually nothing to having some of the best social media in the country in the space of a month. What's been the process with that? And secondly, how does that discussion go with Queen of the South? Can we borrow the stadium for like 20 minutes with this drone?
Right. So let's I'll get to the Queen of the South thing in a wee minute. So David won't mind me saying this, but the social media is actually, it's been me. I've been in charge of social media. Now, I traditionally from a young age was involved in the media, film and television. My wife is involved in film and TV as well, and my younger brother is a filmmaker and a wedding videographer and whatnot. So we've got all the gear and no idea, as they say. And I quite, if you know me from my time at the clan, I am quite happy standing in front of a camera and talking and saying stuff and whatnot, and this is me, this is my business, and blah 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 blah. So I decided very, very early on that fan engagement is critical to a successful team. How are we going to fill that place every weekend? We have to be fun and relevant. So I decided, whilst Phil was dealing with this side of the business and David was designing that side of things, that I would take care of the social media. Now, don't get me wrong, the nice graphics that you're seeing are a combination of my brother and David. My brother does the filming, I direct it all. So it was me that came up with the idea for the Queen of the South Callum video, goalkeeper netminder video. So how we managed to get we kind of just rocked up and said, any chance? No, we didn't. We asked permission first, and couldn't have timed it any worse, because the following morning the new pitch was being glued down. So it's AstroTurf 4G or 5G, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
So it was like, you can't really stand on it. Oh, right. So we had to think on our feet. Well, what do we do? Because originally we wanted Callum standing in the nets of a football pitch, whereby the drone would fly in and he would be standing there saying, "Where's the ice?" So that couldn't happen because we weren't allowed to put the goals on. So then between myself and James, my brother, we thought, and Callum, to be fair as well, he put in a good bit of input to this. We thought, why don't we fly the drone towards the tunnel and have him coming out the tunnel? He doesn't have to go on the grass.
Yeah.
But he can still look like he's part of a football team. And Callum was brilliant. You know, we've interviewed, obviously, we kind of forced all the players to do the interviews with Andy at Sharks TV. And I mean, it wasn't a case of you're not getting your contract unless you do this. It was very much a case of, let's all be in this together. Yeah. If I'm willing to do it and Phil's willing to do it, then you have to be able to do it. And every single player so far has been great, and they've been willing to do it. Now, it's been a timing thing as well. Not every player has had the ability to have their own little film made for them, because that's down to logistics, timing, the type of player that it is, the position they play, the background that they've got. Obviously, the netminder, goalkeeper, football thing was just perfect. You know, the synergy there was fantastic. The Liam Stenton one was a really good one because he was a really quite a big signing for us at that time. But we've got a few others coming up over the next few months as well. So keep an eye on the socials.
Yeah, some very classic hockey player acting from Callum Hepburn, in his bit more Holyrood than Hollywood.
Yes.
He's generally game for
he was brilliant. It was great fun. It was great to work with.
Yeah, because certainly one of the things I put in my piece where I was sort of spewing forth on thoughts on the Sharks joining was because I personally admitted that I was guilty, as were a lot of people heading into the 2022 national final, of overlooking the Sharks, and it was mostly just because the storyline all kind of very much sat with Streatham. They'd won every trophy, they'd 4 from 4, they were going in for the 5th one, and again because and I did have this chat with Andy as well, was that Sharks TV was a thing, but you only found it if you went looking for it. It wasn't sort of being sort of very much kind of broadcast out of there. And so I admitted that Solway opened eyes, and I think they opened a lot of people's eyes in that 2022 weekend because they played Streatham off the ice. But what you've ended up with then is this team that now sort of everybody is looking at. And the question is that obviously because so many of this team is so kind of important to it, and obviously there's been a couple of guys who've have taken that opportunity to step away. John McBeam, of course, is rightly now in the Elite League where he probably should have been last year full time. Liam Danskin's obviously taken the opportunity to go to Hull, but the question will be is that because a lot of people are obviously anticipating that a lot of these guys from last year are going to come back, because the question will be, can the Sharks, who didn't lose a game since October last year, haven't lost at home in 3 years, will they compete at national division level? It's a big question, I think, that's kind of hanging in the air. People are very excited, and you've generated quite a lot of buzz, but the question will remain of, what are we going to see when they come up against a Leeds, a Sheffield, a Telford, even teams, even to an extent. I mean, Hull, who were bottom of the table last year, have vastly improved.
Yeah.
And this side compete, John.
Well, that's the question. And I did stop maybe about 4 days ago, and I said to Peaks and Martin, I was like, right, because we were discussing, although we're leaving player signings up to them, we are all over it really, because we have to discuss budgets and stuff like that, and can we give this player that, and blah, 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 blah. And I said to the two of them, I said, look, are we going to be good enough? What's the point in doing all of this and being the whipping boys? And Martin, being Martin, is like, don't worry about it, John. Don't worry about it. We're there to take over. We're not there to take part. I was like, right, okay. Pressure's on you then, Martin. So
he's consistent at least. He's been saying that to me for 2 years.
I think we've got a good core there. We've brought a lot of the young team back, and some of the not so young team back as well. And the people like Liam Stenton and Barry McKenzie, young Kel Beattie as well, some real talent. And then a few of the other young lads that have come back as well, who've been watching some videos of some of them recently. And, you're thinking, these guys are going to love playing in the National League where they're challenged every minute of every game, So I did say to Martin, look, you kind of waltzed through last season. Are the players ready to get battered about the place? And, you might be 3-1 down getting into the third period this time instead of 5-0 up. And how mentally are they going to cope with that? Don't you worry about that, John. So, I think, we've got a few more signings to go, which hopefully will be...
You've been spitting them out at quite a lick. You might run out by the end of June.
I did think if we gone out too quick with everything, but we'll be keeping social media as fun and upbeat and relevant as possible. When there's no signings to be announced, hopefully we'll be putting stuff out that's engaging and a good laugh, and we're not taking ourselves too seriously. It's about having a bit of fun and generating a little bit of a buzz. As I say, we're trying to develop a few bits around the rink as well, so we'll start teasing that out and get the fans chatting about that over the next few while.
Obviously, the one of the really, really big differences between North One and the National, especially with this season, is of course there is an increased import limit in the National Division. It's gone from 2 to 3 this summer. Now, obviously, it's not particularly been an issue for the Sharks. They've mostly played with one, Peter Gapper, massive fan favourite, great character. Having had the opportunity to speak to him, is the intention to run a full complement of available imports for this coming year?
That's what we're working on. That might not be how it plays out, but I certainly think we will endeavour to run with the 3 imports. But it all just depends on availability, quality, and Martin actually has a phrase now that I've actually adopted into my thinking. When I spoke to Martin about signing players and about the type of player, and he said, I have three rules and they go in this order. It's person, athlete, player. So you have to be a good person first and foremost if you're going to be a Shark. Then you have to be an athlete, so you have to be fit. Then you can be a player. So if we find that there's a Brit who is a better person and athlete than a potential import, then we'll run with 2 imports and we'll bring in that extra Brit. It's all down to the person at the end of the day. Now, the plan is to go with the 3 imports because that's what we're allowed. But if it doesn't work out like that, then if there's a Brit available that we feel fits into that position well enough, then we'll go for the Brit.
There must have been a little tiny bit of research that's kind of gone on at this point. Are there any players, not necessarily that you kind of want to sign? Because of course, I think if everybody given this option would say, I'd like Kieran Brown, please, with his 200 points in the last 2 seasons. Yeah. But are there any players that, from because obviously your perspective has been watching a lot of Elite League, but are there any sort of names of bits and pieces popping up amongst the National Division where you immediately kind of catch your eye and think, even if you can't get that player, you want that sort of player in a Sharks jersey next year?
Yeah, like I said, we've kind of left that to Peaks and Martin, but the National League I'm relatively new to, so a lot of the names I'm not familiar with yet. I mean, I've been watching a lot of videos of late just to keep an eye on other clubs, who they're signing, what kind of players they are, what they're up to, the style of player that they are and whatnot. But we are the owners at the end of the day. The players on the ice are Martin's and Jamie's responsibility, with Craig assisting. Do I have a wish list? I suppose I do, but I'm not telling you.
Wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't try and
no, fair enough. Good
try. Out of you. One of the things that I was thinking about the other day, and I mean, admittedly, the Clan are sort of leaving the Clan to one side a little bit, just because they've gone through this very, very big transition, and they're kind of almost sort of starting from scratch after last year. But I mean, to kind of keep them in the loop a little bit, it wasn't the greatest of years outside of Solway for kind of for Scottish ice hockey. Fife obviously made the final of the Cup, but got battered. Dundee were, I think, probably disappointing is probably the only real way to describe the Stars last year. The Clan had the year that they had. I mean, Solway were a little bit of a light on the hill. I mean, and it's not necessarily to get to. I mean, I'm a very, very big proponent that hockey doesn't exist in a vacuum, and politics is part of life. But how important is this for Scottish hockey to have a success story right now?
Massive. No disrespect to any other team, from the Paisley Pirates through to the Edinburgh Capitals, up to Dundee and Fife and the Clan. We need to start being respected a little bit more in Scotland as a hockey nation, so to speak. So I think for a Solway team to come into the national to compete, and I'm not saying to go in and win it right away, but to come in and to come in and
even though that's what Martin is thinking.
Even though that's what Martin's thinking, it's about getting a little bit of respect back around Scotland as a country that has hockey teams in it. The Fife and Dundee and the Clan had, let's face it, horrific seasons last year. That'll change. Sport, isn't it? Things go in cycles, so that'll change. The Clan's under new ownership, which I think is a great thing for them, and their new coach as well seems to be doing good things so far, from what I can tell. Fife and Dundee, the Dundee owners are cracking guys. The Wardies, they're lovely people. So I think, and they live and breathe ice hockey in Dundee, so they will make sure they do well. They've signed some good players again this season, and the coach is certainly talking a good game at the moment. I like how he conducts himself on an interview. He says the right things, but he seems to say it with sincerity, which is really quite good. So Solway, we need to come in and we need to be respected and looked at. Now, everyone's looking at it because everyone's thinking, what's going to happen? Are they going to be all, hey, and then be a disaster on the ice? Or are they going to come in and make the National League, a little bit, not a little bit better, because it's a cracking league anyway, but the popularity of the National League, certainly from the fans forums that I'm involved in and that I see, it's getting more and more and more and more interest and more popular. And those real hockey people are really focusing in on the National League this year. Not just because of Solway, just because they feel it's a good product and it's a good thing to watch. So,
are Solway going to suffer from a little bit that they have all the eyes on them at once? Because of course we had two new teams come into the National Division last year. You had Bristol come into the league, having stepped up from Division 1. You had Hull rejoin in one of the 65,000 permutations of a team that we've had in Hull, which Matty Davies won't mind me saying. But it obviously split attentions a little bit, because you had two new teams joining everything rather than just the one, whereas you're the new boys all by yourselves, and you've come in and made quite a big noise. Are you setting yourselves up too high? Are you setting yourselves up to set yourselves up on a pedestal you can be too easily kicked off of?
Well, if that's the case, then so be it. We'll roll with the punches. So we're not here to mess about. You know,
Scottish pragmatism, we love it.
Oh yeah, aye, and it makes it a proper national league now as well. You know,
Very
what is
true.
it? Someone on Twitter, literally the day it got announced, was like, the Jocks are taking over, and I was like, right, okay, let's not quite.
That'll be Jamie McElroy. Because
yes, that's the one. Yes, that's the one.
Like, bless his heart.
Yes, but it makes it, in my opinion, it makes it a proper national league now, because you've got a team in Scotland, even though we're just over the border, we're still in Scotland. Yeah, all eyes will be on us, and I'm okay. Me personally, I can't speak for David and Phil or the rest of the team, but bring it on. All eyes on us. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, as you say, it is a national league, and the first thing that a lot of people mentioned as soon as Solway joined, even long before that they joined, was that the travel is certainly going to be an aspect, not just for fans, not just for opposition teams, but for you guys as well. I mean, it was me who put it out there to door. It's the same distance from Romford, from Sapphire Ice and Leisure in Romford to the Dumfries Ice Bowl as it is from Sapphire Ice and Leisure to the rink in Amsterdam. So aside from the fact what an away day that would be,
well, why don't we have a winter classic in Amsterdam then?
I mean, there is an outdoor rink in Amsterdam to do it in, but it might be. I fear for the safety of some of the players on the night after is probably the issue there. But it is quite a big issue from both ends of the spectrum, because you guys are, you know, your shortest away journey goes from, you know, sort of an hour to at least, I think it's like 3 hours 5 minutes. Google Maps told me it was probably your shortest journey. Teams are kind of are obviously going to need to kind of travel. We're looking down, you know, what kind of accommodations are the club kind of looking to kind of do from a fixture perspective, and also how are you guys going to, the logistical nightmare of trying to facilitate this so you guys can play, do the distances, but also kind of be competitive, because that much travel is going to take a lot out of guys.
Yeah, I suppose it's yes, there's more travel, but it's not a huge amount more for each team. You know, from if you think about the distances between the furthest away teams as it stands at the moment, and then you split that by taking that distance and then add the distance from that team to Solway, it's maybe an extra hour or so for some of them. But that did come up. That was a big concern at the start. So and again, the rest of the teams and the other owners have been great thus far. We're going to attempt to do as many double headers as for the teams that are furthest away. We will endeavour to do a double header and a double header. So they'll come here for a double header, we'll go there for a double header, and we'll have a normal face-off time on a Saturday night and then an earlier one on the Sunday, so that everyone can get on their merry way with their hangovers on the Sunday, having stayed over and had a party in the Dumfries Ice Bowl on the Saturday night, which is going to be the place to be on a Saturday night. I'll tell you that.
I was going to make a joke there about how well Queen of the South do during the season, but I feel that I'm getting my lower echelon Scottish football is not my area of expertise. But certainly, like I say, certainly it is got to be the sheer cost as well of that amount of travel is going to be it's got to be quite a concern as well. I mean, cost of living crisis aside, you're facilitating the moving of not just people but equipment and stuff like that. This has got to be something that's got to be quite high up the list of things you're going to be spending money on.
One of the first things, in fact, to answer a previous question properly, one of the first things we did was attempt to put a budget together, which has grown arms and legs since day one. One of the biggest costs on any team's budget out with players is going to be travel. It's just one of those things, but it's about attempting to make that work. So, you know, speaking to the coach companies about the best way to do it, you know, is it going to be more economical once the fixtures are released to potentially, for the further away game, you know, your Bees and your Romford, is it going to be more beneficial to fly from Glasgow to London City, or Glasgow to Heathrow or whatever, and stay overnight rather than pay for a coach and travel 6.5, 7 hours and then 6.5, 7 hours back and whatnot? It might be better to do that. So yeah, I think every team And I thank every team for agreeing to allow us in, obviously, I have to say that. But it's one of those things to develop the league, to make it a more competitive league, to make it a bigger and better league. Having Solway in there is only a good thing. So yes, budget constraints mean that you might have to add X amount of thousands onto your budget for travel, but we will make it work as best as we possibly can. As far as, I mean, we're already talking to a lot of the local hotel chains in Dumfries just to make sure that we can get as best a deal as possible for away fans to come up and stay over, and the players also, and the teams to come and stay over. So,
as a businessman, because I say this.
I was waiting for this question.
Yeah, I mean, I say this with I say this with my cynical hat on. I've been around British hockey now since 2005. I know you've obviously been involved, for quite a long time as well. Like, investing money in British hockey, somebody once said to me, it was akin of just like taking your life savings, sticking it in your garden and lighting it on fire. From a business perspective, what's the return on investment here for you? What does that look like? Because the thing I keep saying to people, and I was having a discussion with a fan of an elite league team the other day, and they said, well, it's like it's a business. And I said, you're selling your own business short by just calling a sports team a business, because it's an entity that trades off of two things, which is capital and emotion. And actually, you kind of have to do right by both of those things. So at least in my personal opinion, you have to. But as a businessman, putting your money into this, what does a return on investment look like in this instance?
I suppose that takes you right back to your very first question. Am I mad? Clearly, yeah. Phil said this at the Q&A the other night. If anyone thinks you get into owning an ice hockey team to make lots of money, then they're mad, because that's not going to happen. It's a business, so it will be run as a business. We will endeavour to run it as a profitable business, but we're not going to retire to the Bahamas by owning the Solway Sharks, that's for sure. However, it's a passion project, really. We don't want to lose money, clearly. Nobody wants to lose money. But, I suppose this is a dream of ours as well, is to get involved in sport, to own a sports franchise of some size. And yeah, we're willing to put our money where our mouth is and make that happen. Yes, it will be a sustainable business, because long term, for the survival of the club and the league, all the teams need to be sustainable financially. And the only way to do that is to make it more accessible for people and to have more people access it. So the more people that come and spend money on jerseys and chips or pints of tenants or whatever it is we're going to be selling, then the more chance that the business will be profitable. So yeah, I mean, who knows?
I think we're coming sort of towards the end of our time, because obviously don't want to completely eat up into both of our evenings.
Right.
But I think
I could talk to you all night if you want. It's up to you.
But I think there's certainly a couple of of other sort of like little bits and pieces I think to kind of touch on. That obviously the season ticket prices have come out. How difficult a conversation was it to kind of set a price for that? Because obviously cost of living is a little bit lower in Scotland, but you've sort of put yourself kind of in the middle of the in the middle of the bracket. It's a little bit more expensive than Hull, but obviously less expensive than Leeds, just as kind of examples of the two of the teams that are nearer to you, for example.
Yeah.
What was the thinking in terms of how we got to kind of that number?
So we decided very early on to look at the whole league as a whole, and deliberately position ourselves slap bang in the middle to the slightly lower end of average, mainly because that's where we feel we should be as a size of a club and the position we expect ourselves to be in, hopefully, and also to make it work. Now you're taking, that was a difficult thing for us, and we were grilled a little bit about that at the Q&A. But what we decided to do, as complicated as it looks sometimes, is to make it accessible for families, and no longer the 2.4 children is the standard family. You have 2 adults, 1 child. You have 1 adult, 3 children. So we decided very early on, as difficult as it is to try and work out the numbers, let's concentrate on making it available to everyone and giving them the pay monthly options and all that as well. But realistically, we're going out to a fan base who are used to turning up on the night, really. So to tell them that there are season tickets on sale, that tickets will be bookable online, cheaper than paying at the door, in order to be scanned in when you get there. We were worried that might be received quite badly, but there was a chap, and there's a sort of private members Facebook page called, I'll give Dave Cochran a shout out here, called Shark Zone, which luckily they allowed me into, so I'm a member of.
You do something wrong and then you're immediately booted back out again.
Exactly, yeah. It's funny, they wouldn't let David in to begin with, because I think I had connections with Craig Peacock and Martin Grubb and Jamie on Facebook, so it looked like I knew them, whereas David didn't. So they kept rejecting him, and it was a running joke for about a week until they let him in. But one of the members in there, in his own words, put a post in the group, in the Facebook page, saying, right, I have dissected all the ticket prices and here's all the benefits, and he just listed them all one by one. He basically did our job for us. So the core fan group have bought into that, which is good, and they've bought into the fact that to go up a substantial level, to be playing professional hockey, to be bringing teams like Leeds, and Telford and MK to the rink, that's a different level of hockey altogether. It's a different experience. It's going to be a different game. That costs more money, and they all seem to be okay with it. I've not really had anyone really be annoyed and angry to her face, anyway, about the ticket prices. But we've made them as competitive as we possibly can.
The big question, of course, with the amount of distance, and obviously a couple of teams didn't, he says, having been in Basingstoke and having had that conversation many times with John Neville. But streaming is going to be an immediate question for you guys. Now, Sharks TV have made a really, really good run over the last couple of years of really detailed, really in-depth highlights. Owen Patterson, and Andy doing bits and pieces on Sharks TV. Everybody's going to start needing to get used to hearing the word "boom" quite a lot over the next little while.
I met him the other night, cracking big guy.
Yeah, but streaming is going to be a question. Is it going to be something the Sharks are going to offer?
100%, and it's going to be phenomenal. We're going to put on a cracking streaming service. We're courting about 3 different suppliers at the moment for the equipment, but we will, I think, certainly with my background anyway, and my connections, the gear we'll put in place will put on a pretty decent streaming. So for all the away fans that are watching this, that think, you know what, I'm not going to make that 7-hour journey to Dumfries, 100% take the webcast, because it'll be brilliant.
I think so, because the thing I find really interesting as well, though, is that there's a fair few people who, and actually people are like, oh, it's such a long way, but then there's a fair few people I've seen who are immediately like, right, I've got to do it at least once, which I think is certainly.
Trust me, once you've done it once, you'll be like, yes, we want to go back there. That was a cracking laugh. So.
Yes, admittedly, I must confess, I did say to Callum Hepburn the other day, I was waiting for the football fixtures to come out as well, because I want to try and do. Yeah, both Queens and the Sharks in the same day. If I'm coming all that way, I'm doing.
Yeah, you might as well. Yeah.
Try and do both. I mean, is there a potential then to actually look into something of a day of sport in Dumfries then, for potentially a double header package kind of thing with Queens, because they're a very historic club. One of the only team in the Bible, as it were, Queen of the South. But but there's some real advantage there potentially to play off of each other's names. And admittedly, I've met a lot of hockey fans who will not touch football with a barge pole for a variety of reasons. But there's trying to like you said, you got a lot of people in the local surrounds who didn't know there was a hockey team. Is there some potential there? Like in the past, Oxford City Stars have done some work with Oxford United. Is there those kind of ideas floating around?
100%, yes. I'm actually chatting at length with the Queen of the South commercial manager at the moment, and we are attempting to try and put some sort of collaboration together whereby, I mean, we don't know what it looks like yet because it's new for both of us, but the concept of having
I want fully
hundreds of
formed
people,
ideas now.
Yeah. Okay, so the plan is,
yeah,
1,000 people in watching Queen of the South at 3 p.m. The game will finish at 5. They'll walk the 50 yards across the road to the Dumfries Ice Bowl. They will come up the stairs to our sports cafe bar area. They will have drink and food, and then they will all trundle downstairs into the rink and watch a phenomenal game of ice hockey, and then they'll all get carried home.
And that is why you're going to be sponsored by one of the local taxi firms, probably as a result as well. I think the thing I will leave, the last question I will ask then, just because the thing, there's obviously, like I say, there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. The start line is in sight. And I'll ask a nice big open-ended question to finish off with, because I'm really interested, because I've asked this question in a lot of different ways to a lot of different people connected to the club. But like I say, now the buck stops with you, and it stops with Phil, and it stops with David. What can people expect when the Solway Sharks come to town, or when they come to Dumfries next year? What are we going to get, and how excited are you about it?
Oh God! So I'm very excited about it. Like, very excited about it. We might not be able to do everything we want to do in year one. Let's just be realistic. However, this is an entertainment business that we're in. It's a sport, but it's also entertainment. So that means on the ice and off the ice. And, having been a sponsor and heavily involved in an elite league team, having travelled all over the country, having seen hockey in America, and having seen substantial amount of hockey in Germany as well, we have got lots of ideas as to what's going to make a game night experience. So we're going to try a lot of different things. Obviously, we're called the Sharks, so there has to be 1,000,005 things that we're going to do that's involving a shark theme. Although playing Baby Shark is maybe not going to be one of them, because that drives me around the bend, that song. I think on the ice, what you're going to get is a well-drilled, disciplined, entertaining team. Martin Grubb is not Martin Grubb for no reason. He's not in the position he's in. He's not respected as he is in the world of hockey, with all his GB experience as well, to not be putting a decent product on the ice, an entertaining product on the ice. But for the hour or so before the game, for the period breaks, and for the hour or so after the game, there's going to be plenty going on around there to get involved in. And, we certainly as a business are looking at the overall picture, and we want people to say, that's where I want to be on a Saturday night or a Sunday afternoon in Dumfries and the surrounding areas. That's what we want to go to, because it's a great night out.
I don't think there's many people wishing you ill, so I would join the long line of people wishing you every bit of success as you guys head towards the start line. It's fastly approaching in less than a couple of months. John Strange of the Solway Sharks, thank you, good man.
Thank you.